Welcome to Catch Her Spark with Jen Maldonado. These are conversations with women who are building meaningful careers, stepping into leadership, and designing life on their own.
Oh my God. Welcome, everybody. I am really genuinely excited about today's conversation because, it's someone who represents a different kind of women, the kind that doesn't look like loud from the outside, right? But it's incredible intentional behind the scenes. So Claudia Flores, she started her career in finance and she spent several years working in data intensive roles that gave her a deep understanding of how information drive decisions. But what makes her story powerful is not where she started, is what she has chose next, how she has transformed, the transitions that she is going through it right now. And not only that, while she was working full time, she made a decision to expand her capabilities. So, in other words, layer by layer, skill by skill, moving from finance into data into full stack development. So, today we're going to have her bring her experience, her journey, pretty much, which is a combination of financial intelligence, technical execution, and data-driven thinking. So now you can see why I'm so happy to have her. This is women who are not longer staying in one lane, they're expanding. It what really reflects a deeper pattern that we are starting to see more often. So today we're going to talk about that evolution, what is changing in Claudia's life, what are some of the awesome challenges that she's dealing today, and a lot of her journey too. And when that happens, we get inspired. So we're going to talk about how to build new skills while still operating as she did at the higher level she did. So with that being said, I just want to say, Claudia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so
How
much
are
for
you?
having me, Jen. I'm so incredibly happy to be here. I know that as I went through my own transitions, really being able to listen to other females pave the way and make those different pivots in their career was very instrumental for myself as well.
Love it. Love it. I think that all of us find that women that inspire us at some point in our lives with the different transitions. And you're going through many transitions right now. But before we go and dive deep into it, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely. So my current role, I'm a senior solution engineer. And really what that encompasses is two broad aspects of using technology and then also having a sales mindset. So when we think about all of the different SaaS solutions out there today, there has to be somebody who's showing the product, who's diving into the product with that customer and explaining the benefits of using that product and why it's going to save potentially multiple hours of time, monthly, quarterly, and so forth. So where my role comes in is I am the expert when it comes to demoing the solution. Any questions that come about with how the technology works, how they can utilize it on a day-to-day maintenance, perhaps any different POCs, which are different ways in how creativity can come about with having those different skill sets and utilizing that within the platform. So that's really what my role entails. And I work closely with a sales team as well as the product team and technology support in order to ensure that we're meeting our customers where they are.
Wow, I love it. I mean, it's a pretty challenging role because pretty much you are in the background trying to make it better, fixing it and giving solutions or finding the way that you can communicate why this specific product it's so great, right?
Exactly. No, yes, exactly. And
Uh,
prior to even being into this role, I had never heard of a solution engineer. Um, just to give you some previous background of myself in undergrad, I actually was an engineering major my freshman year, but I pivoted about my going into my sophomore year. It was a really challenging aspect in my life of working part time, and then also having a full course load and really facing myself of that first year of potentially not excelling as I had anticipated in undergrad and really questioning my path as to where to go. And so years later now I can look back and still have that engineer title, but knowing that it was not a immediate move there was a lot of different bumps and different stories along the way that allowed me to get there.
Wow. Well, you give me the space to ask you this because this is important. And some of the things I say, being an engineer myself too, is like engineer is a way of thinking, right? With more math and
Exactly.
solution. But somehow we decide to do that line of work. How did you get started in this line of work? Tell me one of those stories because I'm curious.
Absolutely. So back in 2019, and this really made that pivot of where I decided to leave finance and really go into tech. But back in 2019, I was living in Newport Beach, California. I was working for an asset managed boutique. And this organization where I worked, we were doing a lot because we really operated as a boutique. A lot of us wore multiple hats. And because I was in a business development role, I was doing customer reporting, I was doing monthly reporting, quarterly reporting, and just anything that fell into the realm of business development, which was quite a lot. But I found that every single month and every single quarter, we would be running these monthly reports. Now, because a lot of reporting is done via Excel, that's where I thought, we're doing a lot of manual effort. How can we streamline this? How can I make sure that there are less errors that I have to take into account when I'm reviewing my work? So that's really what sparked the interest in wanting to dive into further with tech. And from that point forward, I just became more and more curious. I enrolled into a boot camp that was at the University of Southern California at USC. And so I was attending that camp while I was working full time, essentially just trying to make my day to day a bit more streamlined with you taking this program. But it's really often funny when you think about I was trying to make my day to day easier, but instead ended up pivoting my career.
Right? I think that's the engineering mindset, Claudia. It's like, no, this looks too simple. Let's figure a complex way, and I will figure out my simplicity through it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I had never really envisioned myself leaving my career in finance. Being at Goldman Sachs up to that point for about 4.5 years, making that transition was even challenging for myself. I had built, your name recognition, you work with all these different teams. So leaving that was a little bit of a shock for me, I will say so. And during that period, it was 2019, COVID had happened. And I think it really allowed everybody to take a more granular look in their day to day and realize if they don't like something about their life or they don't like something about their role, there can always be change. And really, the only person that's holding you to that change is yourself. If you're able to push yourself and open up different doors, and even if it's a curiosity, just going in that mindset and going through that door in order to find out if that's something that you want to pursue.
100%. I mean, that willingness to be curious, to start over and not follow certainty, because that's the challenging part, is really what builds a structure and allows you to follow passion, figure new things about yourself. And
Absolutely.
oh my God, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I know we're going to talk professional, but also there's a new things that you're figuring out too in your personal life that I think women need to hear too. Let's start with the professional side. So far, you have done a lot of wonderful things, but is there something that you are really proud of professionally?
I will say just making that pivot. It was a very daunting pivot to make at that time to account for the time at Goldman Sachs, my internships, as well as working for that boutique asset firm. I had spent a little over 7 years in that role. I had figured that that's exactly what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. But as COVID really opened up these holes and this curiosity for me, that's really allowed me to leave that entire career behind and start a new one. And I remember thinking to myself, if I can make this change, there's nothing that can stop me. If I have been able to go through this change, leave my previous identity behind, and there was a period in my life where I was like, am I making the right choice? I'm starting over from ground zero. I'm learning how to code from the very beginning. And is this too much for me? And at that time, I will say I was 30 years old. And with having, some of your different coworkers at previous roles being promoted, having different friends going through MBA programs, I started questioning myself. I'm starting from ground zero. Is this even going to be worth it? But now I can say, looking back now 4 years later, absolutely, it was 100% worth it.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see your passion. I think that a lot of times people think about engineering and especially in the software side and they think just coding. And I see, yes, your edge is code is not only coding, right? Yeah, you learn from ground zero. But Claudia, when I think personally, financial thinking inside of tech system come with a completely different approach too. You're talking about efficiency, you're talking about risk, data interpretation, and ways that most engineers don't tend to do that, right? And I can see it clearly because I did the pivot the opposite way, and I'm enjoying it too. And having those two backgrounds mingle is like, wow, what is this, right? It just created the
Absolutely.
opportunity. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I will
definitely.
say that, you brought up a really good perspective because oftentimes individuals go to school for engineering and they just have that skill set. But being able to pivot, and I will say in my current role, they have really admired all of the background that I spent in finance. And I'm bringing a lot of that expertise, a lot of the experience with customer reporting, client reporting, and bringing that to the forefront in my conversations. Because as a solution engineer, your role is to not only help sell the software, but you're also understanding the why they need that software and bridging the two of the business reporting with technology and going hand in hand has been instrumental when I talk to customers about their current problems because I'm able to relate that additional background of I used to be in your shoes. This is how I used to get things done. And now let me show you a way in order to automate that.
Yes, I mean it's expanding both worlds. That's something that I was like so happy. I'm like, oh my God, when I get to talk to her, because you're bringing, yes, as engineers, we tend to focus on the solutions, but we don't understand what is that we're solving in terms that we can translate to business owners, entrepreneurs, executive, and you bring that powerful combination. So
Thank you.
yes, yes. And then not only that, I mean, through that transition, there's other personal transitions that you're figuring out in life. You are a new mom. Tell me how is that impacting how you're approaching work and what kind of advice you have? I mean, after you have been on it for a couple of months, what kind of advice you have for busy professionals that are going through that journey right now?
Yeah, those are all really good questions. And I will say I don't have all of the answers, but I will say what's been working for myself. The first few weeks, just being on maternity leave, I don't know if it was just my personal mindset, my personality, but I honestly craved work. And I don't know if that's everybody. I'm sure that's not everybody, but I was in such a routine where I knew exactly how to do my job well and how to, look after my dog, my husband. And now having a baby has really added another mix into that routine. You don't have a routine really, to say the least, until I'm starting to see somewhat of a routine now, which I'm 4 months out of postpartum. But just being able to be nimble and if the baby is crying, obviously you have to tend to that. Some things can wait. And before, I think I would always operate as I have to get all my laundry done. I have to get all my work done. I have to do all these things in, 100%. But being a mom, you find different avenues and you don't have to give everything your all in every single second. You can find also help. And with that, I will say being open to not having or to having family help, being open to even having, let's say, a nanny or other avenues, because sometimes I know that for women, it's so hard to raise your hand and say, I need some help. I need additional hands in order to get myself to where I need to be and take time for yourself too. So it is a juggling act for sure, but being able to be aware of your needs as well as when to say, I need some help is really important.
Yes. I mean, I think that no, doesn't only apply to the personal life, it applies to professional life too. So I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean that's an amazing journey because it just changes your life. So I'm not a mom. I haven't had that gift yet, but it's just I have nephews and nieces, and I love when I can spoil them and give it back to the parents so far.
That's the
But
best part before I tell you
right.
that.
And to your point, it comes a time where you have to prioritize and you have to figure out what is important today, right? And try to stick to
Exactly.
what is the most important. And you find different ways to do the work. And I think that as women, that's one of the things that we're great at it. We adapt quickly to transitions. We have to. There's no other way.
Oh, absolutely. And I will say, if there was any book that tells you how to manage it, everything goes out the door once you have the baby in your hands. There's nothing that can 100% prepare you for having a child. So I wish I could tell myself for all of the years that I was, wondering whether I could even become a mom, whether that was going to be a route that I was going to take. I can now say, looking back, just do it. If you have any intention that you want to become a mom, there's never going to be the perfect timing. Because as I now am, about to go back to work, I start work in 2 weeks. There has been so many shifts at the organization that I work on. And so there's just never going to be the perfect timing for work, for family, for all of that. You just have to do with what makes sense for you and your partner and your own personal family.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So you mentioned books. Do you have any books that have inspired you to make changes like the ones you did, or any special book that you say, okay, ladies, you need to read this book?
Yes. There's actually a few, but one specifically that really comes to, the forefront is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I remember as I was going through that transition phase, just reading that book really inspired me to know that there is so much more that we're capable of. And when you go through her story and you navigate through, as she was a role within, the White Office as a first lady, but also learning a little bit more about her background and the adversity that all of us as women have had to overcome, whether it's in our upbringing, whether it's in college, there's going to be adversity that we all face. But how do you navigate that? And how do you put that aside in order to foster the thrivingness that you want to be in your next position?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's I think that in whatever we do, the becoming is what really creates that alignment on happiness, content, drive, passion, and vision. If you're overlooking the becoming as a woman or as a person, who are you becoming? You end just having a what I call the task day-to-day activities without really meaning something. And yes, and what I have experienced on my journey is when you focus on the becoming, who you want to become in the journey, on whatever it is that you're doing, your success changes very often and it feels evolution, it feels like progress. So, Claudia, what does success mean to you now that it wasn't used to?
Oh, that is such an interesting thought and question there. Because success for me, what I used to think about like 2, 3 years, 4 years before was I need to be perfect and I need to be able to do my role without any mistakes.
Yeah.
And looking back, that really is debilitating because in case you make a mistake once, you think about that all day. That's what I used to do. I would be like, how could I have done that? How can I minimize that going forward? But success now to me is being able to be self aware of areas that you potentially need to improve, address them, maybe hold yourself accountable and talking to your manager, coworkers. This is an area I'm working on. How can you help me, become accountable for that as I'm working towards that this year? And sometimes when you share those areas in which you're trying to improve on, it really allows you to let go of that as like a post and more of I'm going to get there type of thing. So I think as I've gotten older, just being able to be a bit more candid of where I'm at. And success can also look like just sharing some of the areas, the failures, because in order to succeed, you have to fail first. And I was not aware of that growing up. I thought failure was that's the end. But looking back now, failure is so important in order to reach your success.
Yes. Oh my God, you just gave so many important pointers. Overcoming perfectionism, right? Which is the lowest standard, is the lowest
Mm-hmm.
standard. What I have learned in my journey to about perfectionism is the moment that you understand and start loving your imperfections is the moment that you really start evolving. Because if not, you're
Yes,
not growing. So loving your imperfections, seeing it for what they are, and be willing to improve. That's the beauty of real perfection, right? Because you're
exactly.
always going for something towards. And to your point, sometimes when I'm talking to my students or other friends or business partners, we talk about the fact of failures and the difference between the wealthy people. The wealthy people are willing to failure faster forward,
Yes.
while a lot of people tend to stick in, I don't want to make mistakes. Yes, let me break that moment for you. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, and
Mm-hmm.
mistakes will be your biggest mentors to really make the changes you need to make, right? And be more aware or improve, or sometimes it happens. That's our humanity. So thank you for sharing that, right?
That
I think,
was so beautifully said, Jen. I love the way that, when we, and I can speak for myself in this case, but being a minority and also being the first in my family to be born in the US, I think
mhm,
a lot of the areas that my parents really instilled in us was fear.
yeah,
And fear of not being perfect, fear of not being recognized for, let's say, your achievements. And so I think I really took that on until even, let's say, my 30s. And I just recently started letting that go. Like the failure is going to be okay. And
yeah,
sometimes you have to say, well, even though my parents had mentioned certain areas growing up, we're all human, we're all evolving. And so ensuring that as you're growing and as you're reaching different statues in your organization, making sure that you're making that known to some of your younger employees, because oftentimes we don't get that same experience. And that's really great that you brought that up, Jen.
yeah. I love it. I love it. I think that for us who come from a different country to come to this country, or to your point, to being carry what I call a little bit of the shadows of the standards that are imposed on us, coming to a different culture, a different way of living, right? Sometimes ourselves, we tend to also put some standards, which is okay. I always tell people it's okay that you have your standards about yourself, but
Mm-hmm.
make sure those are your own standards, nobody
Right.
else. And that's when you really evolve and become that person that allows your themselves, or allow you as a person to become that successful, to become that meaningful, to be the person you want to be. And that's what gives you authenticity and success, right? When you can live in your under your own skin, under your own standards. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Well said, Jen. Very well said.
Love it, love it. Now I have a couple of more questions for you, right? Um, you have come from the world of finances and the world of engineering. There's normally in the past, it didn't used to be a women's world for those areas
Mm-hmm.
specifically. Are there any conversations you wish more women were having but are not having them yet?
Well, I will say when I was in my finance career, I admired all of these women who held leadership roles. And I'm like, how do they do it? How do they do it so effortlessly? And I remember there was one individual who said, do it scared, do it if you're emotional, just do it. You will never have the like as I mentioned before, the right time, the right space. But if there is an opportunity for you to step into a leadership role or to speak or to do something that is out of your normal bubble, just do it because you will learn something about yourself, about the opportunity that you just did. So if I had some alter way to go back, in time, I would say, just continue to do it because some of those conversations are not had when you see other women in those prestige leadership roles and you're like, I just wonder how they were able to get there.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was they did it scared.
Yeah. Yeah, they did it. They did it. Do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Just do it.
Do it anyway. Now, I think that that's something I want to ask you too, because since you have been in this environment, I mean, I'm not sure about your situation, but with many of the people I speak, especially busy professionals, executive, in careers, like they're doing incredibly successful in their career or business, but that success usually comes with long hours of work and a lot of responsibility. In that process, a lot of women or some people start thinking about the future
Mhm.
when maybe they want to keep the same level of income, right? Income high,
Yeah.
but not work so hard. They start asking questions on how to create income beyond the work they do every day. Things like invest in stocks, bond, real estate, financial planning, crypto, and you have a lot of background on that. So, what are your thoughts about creating income outside of work?
Oh, I think that's instrumental. I think everybody, every woman, everyone on this earth needs to start thinking about what happens if your 9 to 5 goes away. And in certain aspects, I think, some backgrounds have a little bit more insight into that growing up. I think with my parents being, the first to come here to the US, they didn't really have much knowledge on that. But as I went to school in finance, I started to learn some of those tools that was able to help me. And so right now, my husband and I, we just recently shut down our Airbnb, but that was one way in which we were also making some income on the side in addition to our 9 to 5s. Whether it's real estate, whether it's ensuring that you're maxing out your 401k, have your Roth IRA, and having all of the tools to make your money grow for you, because just if your money's just sitting into a savings account, it's not doing you any favors. And so being aware of that and how we can invest our money to work for us while we're going to bed, while we're doing other activities, I think that's so important. I had never thought that my husband and I would own an Airbnb, but we were doing that in addition to our jobs. And I will say that is a tough business. There is so much turnover with cleaning, with ensuring that all of your ratings are high and just making sure that you're really appeasing all of your customers.
Yes, yeah, for sure. I mean, we can that I geek on those things too. And Airbnb is not a easy business. It's not passive, right? When you're the one
Right.
managing, it has its pros when you have an active um, salary. It helps with the tax write-off. But geez, can we spend time trying to manage that, right?
Yeah, we recently, shut it because now we have a baby. And so there's just no way that we can manage all of those different aspects now.
That's correct. Sorry,
Bless you.
funny moment. That is amazing. That is amazing. So now you have your life have changed. You have a kid, you have your husband, you have, a lot of work to do. What do you do or what do you enjoy outside of work? What does Claudia loves to do outside of work?
Oh, wow. I love workout classes. I'm just a little, I love the endurance that brings when you're doing like a HIIT class, a running class. You can find me oftentimes at the Lifetime that I go to. I just love just trying different workout classes. And I think going and, just exercising your brain because I mean, every day, I don't know about many of us on the call, but we're sitting, we're on our laptops, we're working. But what are you going to do for your body? How are you going to keep, your brain engaged? And I think it's trying different things, exercises, yoga, Pilates. There's just a number of different exercises that you can do, even like cryotherapy. My husband recently started doing the cold plunge, and he has said nothing but great things that it's done for his inflammation. So, just other things in order to take care of yourself. Working and your role day to day is one aspect of who you are, but there are other different avenues in order to make sure that you're being fulfilled within your body too. So like reading, of course, is important. But I honestly believe that exercise has provided a way for me to manage stress when I am feeling like I'm about to lose it, or just different ways that you can start thinking about maybe a different problem that you're having at work. Sometimes if I'm doing Pilates, I'm thinking about different things, but sometimes you need a break, and getting outside of the house, going on a walk, you start to think a little bit more about those situations and how you can address that coming back to your seat.
I love it. I mean, you're going to probably laugh about this one, but when I am working out, sometimes I put myself little challenges, and as silly as it sounds, it gives me a different type of attitude and confidence. Like, for example, I want to be able to do one pull up without any help.
Yes.
And the first time I did those true pull ups, I don't care what the world thought, I did it. And
absolutely,
it was this mindset of just doing that. And, it's like that rule of make your bed before you leave, because at least, that's going to be good. For me, the fact that I was able to do that, it became that thing too. So
if I could get some tips, I cannot do a pull up by myself. So I might have to reach out to you for some of those tips.
Yes, definitely. I mean, you have to practice. You have to start with that band, right? And make sure that your body it's aligned properly. I used to walk a lot my body on this balance. So I started working a lot on my balancing. And I noticed that the more I balanced, the stronger I became and the better I was doing. So I learned that process of using my body. So be conscious about your body balance and use that assistant of the band, and just go from the toughest one to the lightest one. And you're going to find yourself doing better and better.
Oh man. Okay. I'm going to try that because that's been on my list for a while, but I've never been able to get that one done.
Yes. There's a lady that she do like 8 of them. And I'm like, maybe one day. I don't have that much ambition, but girl, kudos to you.
Yes. It's inspiring.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to see someone else doing it in order for you to, I have to figure this out. Maybe I'm going to ask her, right? How to do that. Yeah. I'm okay with 2 for now.
Congrats. You're beating me. So
yeah, girl. Yes. I mean, I have to. So, are there any fun facts or quirks that people might not know about you?
Quirks. I can wiggle my ears. That's been one that I've carried through all of grade school. Aside from that, no, nothing that really comes to mind. I'm just, continuing to try to improve myself. And I think that's really the area that I've always made known with whatever team I'm supporting, with whatever job I'm doing. I'm not perfect. And of course, there are different areas that I'm trying to evolve and, try to make those known.
Thank you. I love it. Now, we're getting to the end, but there's a few things I want to ask too. So, because you're going through these transitions too, and I think a lot of women are in this position, what would you tell a woman who feels successful but restless?
I would say for that situation, I would tell her to find peace in the morning, ground herself, whether it's a walk before work starts, whether it's, journaling, whether it's, I'm not sure if that person is religious or not, but praying I will speak for myself. I am Christian, and I found that in the last 3 years of being a bit more in the Word, has allowed me to get through some of those hard obstacles, whether I'm feeling restless or anxious. Just praying before I'm about to go into a meeting that I know is not going to be the most exciting, or listening to some worship music before, going into the day. So those small, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes of just being outside, listening to calming music, something that you know is good for your heart and is going to make you feel at peace. Because nobody else can make you feel calm but yourself, and those aspects where you put yourself in.
100%. That's such an amazing um, advice, finding that time, make time, right? If you really want it, make that time to get that rest, those moments, even if it's 5, 10, 15, whatever is the time, it's worth it. So it's worth it.
Yes,
I love it.
absolutely. And breathing. I have done that a lot more recently. Just taking 5, 10 breaths before something that I know is going to cause me to be a little bit restless and anxious. Yeah, breathing exercises, certainly.
Wow. Yep. For sure. For sure. So, Claudia, if people want to connect with you, get to learn more about you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
I would say via LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn every now and then. I don't check it as frequently since I've been on maternity leave, but I will definitely be more on there in order to address any questions. I'm always happy to share my journey. I know that everybody takes different pivots in their career, and being able to see somebody make their way out of it, I think that is a true testament of that it can be done. But sometimes being able to share that and hear a different perspective on it when you're scared, provides a lot more insight. So I had wished I'd reached out to more people who had made those pivots prior to making it, because there were some nights, Jen, I tell you, I was like, did I make a mistake? Am I going to get out of this? And you will. So that's what I wish I would have done.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being open to share your journey, your life. Thank you for coming to the show. We really appreciate your presence and sharing all your journey.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being on here.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Catch Her Spark with Jen Maldonado, where bold women lead the way. Ready to share your spark? Apply to be a guest at catchherspark.com/guest.